Today is April 13th, 2012. I am talking to Gerald Ray in his office. I'm Nancy Ungerman, and the videographer is Ruth Andrews. Good morning, Gerald.
Good morning.
We've already heard some of your background. It's amazing. This is going to be fun. Tell me a little bit about yourself, as far as where you grew up and how long you've lived in Dallas.
Well, that's easy. I've lived in Dallas all of my life. I was born here, born at St. Paul Hospital, I'm told. I don't recollect that, but I was told that. And I come from a family of 3 sisters, who at this time, thank the Lord, they're all with us. And of course, mother and daddy.
Well, what are
Joe Ray and Elizabeth Beck Ray.
your children?
And I've got children now. I've got a daughter named Julie Fields, and her husband is David Fields. And we've got 2 grandchildren from them, Elizabeth and Andrew. And then I have a son named Joe Ray. His wife is Allison Ray. And they have given us 3 girls, Katie, Becca, and Lexi, and in that order. And so I've spent my whole entire life in Dallas. Grew up mostly in North Dallas, although we did live in South Dallas very briefly. I was probably about 7 years old when the folks decided to move north, which was a big deal back then.
What street in South Dallas?
We lived on, which is now MLK, we lived on Forest Boulevard. And then lived next door to my cousins and my aunt and uncle.
Your cousins are?
Yes, well, they passed away, unfortunately. You may have known them though, Gail Ray and Gloria Ray, and they were twins.
Mm-hmm.
They too had been married, and Gloria and her husband both had passed away. Gail, my cousin, his wife still lives here in Dallas, and her name is Janie Ray. It was Janie Rutledge, and she's quite active at the temple, as well as her parents have been for years.
Were your parents born here?
Well, Daddy was. Daddy actually was born in Colorado. So when you say here, I will presume that you mean the United States. So Daddy was a citizen of the country, and Mother was not. Mother was born in Odessa, Russia, and she finally made it to the United States. And at that time, and as she tells the stories, and as I had somewhat briefed you a little bit earlier, she had a exceptional mind for history, and would often talk about the pogroms that would come into these small Russian villages.
Particularly Odessa.
Yes, and she told me that if it were not for a particular Christian family, that good probability she wouldn't have lived, because what they would do is put a cross in the window, and then the Cossacks, they would just bypass the house. So I don't get to tell you exactly how long that lasts, because actually Mother got to New York when she was about 13 years old.
With her whole family?
No. This was the more interesting aspect, I think, of her life. No, they just put a tag on her and sent her to New York, and she grace of God, she landed and they let her stay. Because back then, if you coughed, Mother, at least this is according to Mother, and I have read about the Asylum because of her, when if you coughed or had any signs of any type of malady that could be passed on, they just send you right back. So she got here, and my favorite, one of my favorite quips was, I said, Mom, what was the first thing you remembered about the United States? Well, I thought maybe she would say the Statue of Liberty. And she said, well, she said, a black person and a banana. And I said, well, that's interesting. She said, yes, I'd never seen a black person and a banana. We never saw a banana in the depths of Russia. So what they did is they put them in what you'd call today's world holding cages. They're like these, like a jail uses to hold prisoners.
All immigrants?
Yes, and they would just leave you there until someone came and claimed you, so to speak. You're like baggage, if you will. So they gave Mother a banana to eat. She said that, of course, everybody laughed at her because she just started trying to eat it with the skin and all. And that didn't work too well. So an uncle came and got her. And then from there, she spent just a few months actually in Chicago. And then came to Dallas because her father was here. But her father was very ill with tuberculosis. And back in those days, there was no cure for TB. And it's amazing she didn't contract it, the disease. But she didn't, and she took care of him. Keep in mind now, you're talking about a 13-year-old girl.
Let me backtrack.
Sure.
Your father had TB.
Not my father.
Oh, your uncle.
Her mother's father.
Yeah, oh, okay.
Mother's father.
Okay.
He had TB, and then they got together here in Dallas, and Mother took care of him. She worked as a seamstress at 13. Like, she was an unbelievable seamstress. You cannot believe she made all the girls' dresses. And still, Julie's got some of her clothes and drapes and bedspreads and everything. She was extremely talented lady.
Tell me her name.
Elizabeth.
And her last name at the time?
Beck.
Elizabeth Beck.
Beck, B-E-C-K.
Oh.
And so.
And your uncle was Beck?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And so that's essentially what she did as a child. And then my grandmother, Molly, which was Mother's mother, was still in Europe because she had to get the rest of her family out of there. And so Mother made a few pennies a week, and to this day I don't understand how they did it, God bless them, but they did. And she would send whatever she made and lived with her father, tried to take care of him with this horrible contagious disease, and survived. And somehow, some way, which I am a bit not real clear, but her daddy and her met. My father was daddy was funny. Daddy was a man of a lot of laughter, and he was from Colorado, and so of course he thought, he always called her the greenhorn.
Let me backtrack for 1 minute.
Yeah.
Your mother, your mother got to Dallas
Hmm?
because your uncle,
No,
your,
no, because her father,
her father.
right, I wasn't here.
Okay, yeah, no, I know. Because her father,
Was sick.
okay, okay.
And I think what you're getting a bit confused, it was the uncle that finally got her from Ellis Island to her
Okay.
daddy via Chicago,
Okay,
but
okay,
it was a circuitous route
Okay.
back in those days.
yeah,
And I
Yeah.
suspect they didn't fight first class, or as the saying goes.
yeah. I'm trying to make a direct route to why Jews were in Dallas, Texas, how they got there, and so,
Okay, that she got here because of her father being here.
oh, I see, I see.
Now, I'm told, and I'm no historian about Jewry, I can tell you, but the little bit that I have read about it, a lot of the Jewish population came up through Galveston,
Right,
and that's why there's so many Jewish settlements. I don't know about today's world, but just back in the 50s, let's say, where there's a lot of Jewish people where you never would have expected Tyler and Galveston and places like that, and Houston, of course, but Hempstead was a place, and you'd say, Hempstead, I mean, it's like nowhere. So, but I'm told that a lot of that was due to the fact that Galveston was a major port, if you will,
yeah,
and so I suspect that, you know, the economics, the laws of economics worked and pulled a lot of people into these. At that time, Dallas certainly was bigger than those other communities, and they saw something here. So that's kind of, that's essentially how Mom and Dad met in Dallas.
what did your father do for a living?
Daddy was great. Daddy was, I think Daddy, want to tell you this, is that Daddy had about a 5th grade education, I believe, but he was a very hard worker. He had a good mind, and in terms of, he had a great foresight of things, about where things, particularly real estate. You know, now this doesn't sound like a big deal in 2012, but if this is circa 1945 or 1950, and I had put you on Preston Road, which was a cattle trail, as you know, and he would have said to you, Nancy, one day there's going to be a filling station, or there'll be an apartment there. And you'd have said, God, this guy's. So he had a capacity. He would have been one of our. I was just thinking this as I'm telling the story. He would have been one of our great speakers at our Kupfer deal, because he had this entrepreneur spirit. He had a personality that when he walked in the room, he took over the room. And he also had, which I have tried to tell my grandchildren and others, the other thing that I think made Daddy successful in what he did, he knew no one was his enemy. Nobody. He didn't care if they were black, they didn't care if it was green, color meant nothing, which again, today's world, you saw, well, yeah, big deal. Well, it was a big deal. This is 1940.
In the South.
In the South, and they still had, you know, restrooms that were segregated. You couldn't drink out of the same water fountains and all that. And Daddy just said, "Oh, that's a bunch of hogwash." So, I guess what I'm coming to, his mind was such, it was open mind. He was not a guy that you could put behind a desk and give him an accounting prop or something like that. So he just really got into business. One thing that I thought he saw, and he was right, there used to be a chain of, they were called pig stands, and you may remember them. They were very good. They were scattered all over here, and they were more than just sandwich shops. You could go in and get a nice steak and fried chicken.
But they were called pig stands?
Pig stands, Dr. Jackson was his man's name that started them. He was an actual doctor, but gave up medicine for this idea. And he put them out, and they were clean and popular. And again, if you see even any pictures of it, you'd see what I'm talking about, convertibles. It looks like something out of a 1940 movie, you know, young people with convertibles, and they would have, some of them they had carry-out gals, but most of them you walked in, you sat down. Well, Daddy got the idea to put in jukeboxes by the booths. So you used to have a booth that, let's say, seats 4 or 5 people, and on the wall there was a wall, what Daddy called it a wall box, but it was flush with the wall, and you put it back then a nickel. And could get here Glenn Miller and all of that. It was just fabulous. And so he did put them in all those places, and he made a nice living out of that. And then he got.
Were you still on Forest? Were you still young?
Well, we were.
Under 7?
I was about 8 or 9. Then he decided he wanted to open up a movie house, which he did with his brother.
The name of the movie house was?
Down by Arcadia. It's really a good looking place. I mean, it was nice. And again, this doesn't sound like anything to sit here today, but up until that time, all movies virtually were shown downtown Dallas. Palace, Majestic, Tower, Melba. Back that time, they had a movie house called the Newsreel, because this World War II was cooking. And so Daddy said, "No, I'm going to put one." And it was, you know, where if you go down Ross, there used to be a big Sears store going towards Greenville. It was on towards Greenville, going down there. So he did that, and then he opened, I think he opened a liquor store, but he didn't much care about that. He didn't
So
do too much.
he actually was prosperous.
Well, yeah, I guess when you prosperous.
Well, he was entrepreneurial.
He was entrepreneurial, and I'm trying to think to characterize him. I guess in a sense they were. It's hard for me to kind of think about what they've did. They built a gorgeous home on Hanover Street. And again, it's hard for people who didn't know Dallas or don't think about the history. That was kind of like hitting it may not have hit a home run, but it probably hit a triple. And it was a beautiful home. And that man, that was he loved beautiful things.
Gerald, what was his affiliation with the Jewish community? Did he belong to a synagogue?
He didn't. I still laugh. I'm laughing because my sisters and myself, we often reminisce a lot about Daddy and that particular aspect of him, of his religious. Mother was much more religious, which I believe was a result of her difficult childhood in Russia, and being, essentially an outcast at 6 and 7, 8 years old over there, and have to. Can you imagine being 12 years old, not being able to talk, and you jump aboard a steamship and they throw you in the bottom of a boat with where the animals were, and to somehow survive all that and not be
Affected.
Not be upset by. My father, he was not a religious man, but and I think sometimes people say this more of a cop-out, which I don't intend it to be with him, when they always say, well, but he was religious. Well, Daddy, I guess I would say formal religion was not important to him.
Yeah, well, look, he was. I mean, he lived the golden rule.
Oh, God. He was, if I could turn out to be half of what he was in only 51 years, I'd figure God has given me a good game plan. He was, and I mean, he didn't make a big to-do about it. Him and Mother, I can remember as a little kid, Mother said, now Joe, it's time, we gotta go to the temple. It's holidays. He said, I didn't go through all of that. But then the irony of it is, since he was such a people person, you can't believe what a people person this guy was.
How did they?
And once he got there, he loved it because he was like.
There were people in that temple.
Not only that, he commanded. I don't mean commanded. He commanded their attention. I mean, he was like the Pied Piper because he was funny. He was jovial. He was not, like I'm telling you, he was nice to anybody in the world. I don't care, you could have been black, orange, you could have been a laborer, you could have been a whatever.
How did they meet? How did your mother and father meet?
I think they went on some kind of date, and back then and they had a horse and buggy back then. And they lived right, sort of past, okay, if you're coming down the tollway into Ackerd Street, have you seen where those bulls are on some of that space? They live right up in that area. There's still a few houses. And that's exactly where they lived.
Yeah. Was it instant attraction?
Well, according to my father, or mother, I think it was, but Daddy was such a kidder. he just kid her unmercifully.
With her accent, I imagine, the
Oh
accent.
my gosh, you know, he says, I got the only greenhorn in the county and all of that. Yeah, but he was a great guy, believe me. I should be so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know where you moved, Hanover. I pass it every day, every single day.
And of course, that was right at the beginning of World War II. And so my sisters and myself and Daddy and Mother, we all lived there. And even though my sisters had gotten married, but the boys had gone off to military. And I don't know how Mother did it. She's just amazing. She was the most amazing person I've ever.
And she lived long enough to
Yeah.
be an influence on your children.
Yeah, well, my daughter Julie is not in looks, because Julie, I kid Julie, I said, Julie, you're about the size of a medium-sized dog. She's about this high. But boy, is she tough.
Mhm.
Holy Toledo. Not mean, not mean.
Strong.
Strong.
Mhm.
She didn't have a mean body in her, but boy, if she thinks she's right on an issue or really believes in something, as little as that one is, she'll fight you to the nails. And she does tremendous amount of work for the community. I'm really proud of her about that. She's on the board at Temple now, and she does the American Jewish Family Service. She teaches at some school, I can't give you the name. She teaches, I think, 3 days a week for these.
Levine?
No, it's a public school.
Oh,
And we're these poor little kids, you know, they don't have much. So she does that. Temple. She started this, and now it's got its own life cycle. Actually, her and Elizabeth, which is her daughter that I told you is at Brandeis, they got the idea of doing a book review for what they call the High House. You're familiar with it, I presume, where they have these, Elizabeth calls them challenged people. And it started off like most things, kind of a nice thing to do. But knowing my daughter and my granddaughter, they made it into a real deal. Yeah, they do a book review, they do part of the book review, they develop crossword puzzles, so these unfortunate people can go and do something. And I once went one time, I had to walk out of the room, about to just burst out crying. I just couldn't take it. I walked down the hall. I couldn't. I thought, oh my God, in front of
and what pride you must have.
in front of Elizabeth. I can't sit here and just cry like an idiot. So I just got up. Oh, this was one child there. She's half blind and can barely talk, and she'd been in some horrible. What got me is they told me that she was valedictorian, or going to be, I think, at Hillcrest, and she got involved in some kind of horrible car wreck, and she's now blind and can barely speak. So we don't have any problems, do we?
What temple did your father sort of belong to? And your
Temple
mother?
Emmanuel.
Emmanuel? How old is Temple Emmanuel?
Well, I don't really know. It was in existence when we lived in South Dallas, and it was on Park Boulevard. South Boulevard, on the corner. And even at that time, it had been there quite a number of years. I want to tell you back to the late 1800s, but I'm kind of.
Were you bar mitzvah?
I was, which is an absolute miracle from God.
Well, your mother was a strong woman too.
Yes, she was. Yes, she was. Poor mother.
But
You know, I could get into those stories and you wouldn't even believe it. How I got my mitzvah, I'll never know. I just can't believe it to this day. First of all,
Did your father go?
Well, and by that time he was deathly ill.
Oh.
And I mean, he couldn't have gone, he couldn't have walked from here to the end of that. And so, but I did it. Mother schlepped me back and forth. This is before the tollway, before Central, before anything. You just go down Preston Road through downtown and finally Harwood and then to South Boulevard. But we did it. So.
Let's turn to your education. You went to elementary school, no, you went maybe a year in South Dallas, right?
No, actually, my education started in North Dallas.
What school?
Went to University Park, and I lived on Hanover Street, and Harrel lived on Purdue.
He sure did.
So,
And we're talking about Harold Cookford.
yes.
Yeah.
And so this was a bit like Tom Sawyer. Back then, of course, again, you gotta keep saying this, sad as it is, nobody worried about their children walking to school. So I would walk one block down Thackeray to Purdue, and Harold would be standing at the corner, and the two of us would then walk about 3 more blocks to University Park School, which is on Lover's Lane. And of course it was much smaller. And so that was our modus operandi.
So Harold Cookford, how did you hook up with him? And what a combination you two must have made.
Oh boy.
But he's not related.
He's
yeah.
not related.
Jeez.
No, he's not really. Oh, it's, I don't know, we just stayed friends. And, you know, you go through junior high, and we did that, and then we, of course, in high school, and, oh my gosh.
What extracurricular activities did you do other than setting fires?
Oh, well, with Harold was my straight man. So, one day, we were in the library, and so I got the idea of setting an alarm clock in there. And then leaving Harrel in there. So I walk in there and I put the alarm clock and I set it to go off in about like 10 minutes.
Where Harold was sitting.
Sure.
Right.
And then I left. And then the thing goes off. And I should remember because I think I gave the lady, probably knocked off 20 years of her life. She just went crazy. She first comes to Harrel, because she knew we were buddies. She said, did your friend do that? And Harrel said, I don't even know what you're talking about. The whole thing sounded like a break from Alcatraz. And so we finally found that, so we got ourselves in a lot of trouble there. And we just stay in trouble. I mean, it just seemed like there was always there was always something to do. I mean, do you know what I mean?
Well, come on, Dallas, Texas, in the 40s and 50s, you had to do something to keep yourself entertained.
Yeah, he once got him to throw I'm trying to remember what precipitated this. Now, this I shouldn't have done. Remember the Wrangler? Did you go to Highland Park?
I'm from California.
Okay, well, we used to have a yard guy, wore a black hat and a black outfit, and he cut the bushes with, back then, real deal. Shears, yeah, not electric. And I told Harrel, I said, throw me those desk things, they would somehow come off, because everybody would undo the screws, you know, for whatever reason. So Cup, and there was no air conditioning. You need to add that. There's no air conditioning back then. Beautiful tall windows with shades, but no air conditioning. So I yelled to Harold to throw me the desk top, which he did, and I let it go. And it went outside, and it missed this guy about that foot, and we got ourselves in some more trouble. So we just stayed like that.
This is a question that I ask everybody, and I think I already know the answer with you. But did you meet up with any anti-Semitism at all?
No. I feel lucky about that. I mean, I know that it does exist, it did exist, and I guess it will exist, but and I never ran into it in high school. We still go to high school functions. I went to one just 2 weeks ago, and you know, I've never had a problem, to my recollection, at A&M, and I never had a problem in the Air Force. Now, you know, it's kind of a loaded question in the regards that you never know what somebody really thinks. You could walk out of the room and the guy says, oh, that's a big jerk. But as far as ever hearing anyone say anything, you know, negative or nasty about anybody, I tell you what, A&M, when I think about it, is unbelievable when it comes to that. Because now again, I'm going back into the 50s.
Yeah, we're gonna go right into your college education because because you've really been influenced.
Right.
You went to elementary school, University Elementary School. Then from there you
went to Highland Park High School.
Graduate. Yeah, and tell us a little bit about your college and your college experience, because it's had a tremendous influence in your life, I could tell.
Well, you're very observant. I just was at A&M with Donnie, as a matter of fact.
Donnie.
Zell, Wednesday. And we go down there, we've been asked 3 times for the past 3 years to talk to what they call a fellows group. And these are some of their brightest students. And the man who teaches it is a 3-star general. His name is John Van Alstyne. And when he first called, he calls you Ray, and I said, General Van Alstyne, yes sir. He said, I want you and Zell to come down here and talk to my group on leadership and what have you. And I said, General, we'll be there, but I said, it's a little bit of an oxymoron to think that here you are, 3-star general, and you want us, Bud Abbott and Lou Costello, to come down and talk about leadership. And he said, no, the kids really like to hear from you guys. So, getting back to your question about A&M, yeah, and this is, I guess, why I even told you that a little bit. One of the students, and there's about 35 of them, just this Wednesday when I was there, said to me just virtually what you said. You know, like Mr. Ray, A&M absolutely, you can tell, really had an impact on you, or words to that effect, or a special meaning to you. And my response was yes. And so it does to this day have a great deal. In fact, if the truth of the matter, aside from this office, the hangar where the airplane is, and I guess home where I just go and regroup, so to speak, A&M is where I am.
What got you there? All the Jews were going to the University of
Right,
Texas.
there was no
to
Jewish
Texas?
people there.
Yeah, except for Donald Zale.
Donnie was there, or when I say
Cookford,
none,
was Harrel?
Harrel
Yeah.
was there, yeah. Well, when I say there was none, that's being
Yeah,
dishonest.
yeah,
There was
few.
maybe 75 of us, but that's spread out of 4 classes.
Mhm.
You know, freshmen, sophomore, you know, et cetera. And your classes are not where they're all bunched up, so you could go forever and not see another Jewish kid.
But you were interested in service, military
I
service,
think-
as opposed, and
I
that,
think I would answer you this way, maybe 2 ways. I think I'd have to just say to you, my interest in A&M today is predicated on something different than my interest was, half a century ago. What A&M, I think, did, now, while you're doing it, I want to be, as a former president of ours used to say, I want to be perfectly clear about this. It was miserable. There's no fun to it. You don't really have fun until you're about your junior year there. Your freshman and sophomore year is not your time. You're restricted. You can't do this. You got a yes sir, no sir. I mean, and if you're not used to all of that, which no one else is, you just have to accept it, and that's the rules. And if you don't like it, as far as they're concerned, out. They don't want to mess with you. So I think, to answer your question, it's more of a work in progress than an immediate love affair. It's, you know, and I think that's a pretty good way of thinking of it.
but you
truthfully.
stuck it out?
Yes, but I stuck it out because I'm sort of like that. I mean, I figure if somebody else can do it, providing I want to do it now, but if someone else can do it, I'm going to do it, providing I want to do it. So I did stick it out, and with all of the regulations and the core traditions that call for a lot of that, you still have fun. I mean, there's still to it. And I think what you learn, or what I learned, is the camaraderie of people, and that respect, which I believe in. We had guys there that literally came off of farms, and yet we also had guys there that some of their parents were the richest. Bartell Zachary's a good case in point. Bartell Zachary's father started Zachary Engineering, and they do these enormous dams. I mean, all over the world. I mean, you name it. It was like the Cooley Dam and those kind of places were that massive undertaking. And Bartell was in my class down there. And I tell this story to myself because it shows you how naive you are as a kid. So he invited me to come to San Antonio for Thanksgiving. I said, Bartell, I don't have a car. I can't get to Thanksgiving and get back to the campus. You can't just wander in and off that campus like you could at SMU, let's say. You gotta be there at certain hours. And he said, no, I want you to come in. I want you to meet your father. I want my father to meet you, and blah, blah. And so, the more I thought about it, I said, well, a few days went by and I told him, I said, Bartell, I could go, I could get a pass to leave the campus if I could get a ride. Oh, he said, is that your problem? I said, yeah. He said, well, and he didn't mean this, he just meant it as a fact. He said, well, the plane is gonna pick me up, and so you just come with us. I didn't know what he was talking about. So we went there, and he was kind of like, I'm telling you, he was like one of the, the extreme individuals. So, but yet, you had guys, most of them came from agrarian areas, and dads and moms were just making it through. So I thought it was a tremendous. I didn't think of it in those terms. Yeah, but it did. It just really says to you, man, there's a lot of different people out there handling different problems, different ways.
Did you work when you were in college?
I didn't work at college, but I worked in the summers. And I had great jobs. I worked on a meat packing floor, on the killing floor, which the first morning I almost
died.
fainted.
Where was this? In
Here.
Here? Dallas?
Yep. Oscar.
It's probably Oak Cliff.
It was. Oscar was the black man who killed they used to hit him right here with a big old sledgehammer, and then my job, then they'd take it was like a chain, put it around the back leg, hoist is what the word I was thinking of, and hoist them up, and then they slit their, all the stuff came out, and then my job was to get all the stuff and take it to the chilling floor, so I did that. And then I also spent time as a helper for of all things, roofing. And if you want to work your little self
In the summer, in the
the
heat.
summer, oh my God, I thought I'd never pass there. So I did that, and made some money, and then I worked. The best job I had was Ashburn's Ice Cream on Lover's Lane. Mr. what's his name? Started with an H, I'll think of it.
Did this go towards paying for your education or paying for your spending money?
Both, but Mother didn't have that, I knew Mother wasn't just
That's right, your
flush
father had
with
died.
Mother,
Yeah,
right.
your father.
So I think I did. Maybe I didn't do perfectly about that, but I think I was sensitive enough. And didn't have a car. That's now, But so there I was one day A&M.
You, in this community, you're known as one of the most successful, you've had a most successful career. Can you just start from the beginning, what you did after you graduated, and how you've developed into this?
Well, first of all, thank you for your kindness. I'm not sure it's well that deserved, but I appreciate your comments anyway. Well, mine was fairly direct. After I finished A&M, all of us had to go into the military. That's part and parcel of it. So I chose the Air Force. And this is a kind of a funny story on my mother. So I decided if I'm going to the Air Force, I want to fly the airplane if I possibly can. I don't want to be in the desk, and that isn't what I want to do. So if I can fly the airplane, that is what I want to do. So I go in, and this is in May. Okay, I can do it. This is in May, right before graduation at A&M. Mother was laying down, I could see it like we were talking. It's about 9 at night. I said, Mom, I gotta tell you something. She said, what's that? I said, now you know I'm graduating A&M. She said, I know. She, kind of like, are you nuts? Yes, I know. And I said, but here's the catcher. I have to go into the service. Okay? And I've already got my orders before I even had my diploma. And she said, so what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to go apply to pilot training. Man, it's dead quiet. And she says, is that really what you want to do? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, well, if that's really what you want to do, then go do it. Or go try to do it, I think was the more exact words. So, fast forward years after that, I'm sitting there talking to her. I said, Mom, I got one question to ask you. Remember the time I told you I was going to go to pilot training and you were just so calm about it and you didn't seem upset or anything like that? And I said, that's a mystery to me. I figured you were going to give me a real problem about that. She said, well, to be honest with you, I figured you'd wash out in about the first 2 weeks. A wonderful way for a mother to let you down. Okay, so to fast forward this, I go through the Air Force, I get my wings, I fly airplanes, which is another great, exciting venture in my life. But then I also wanted to go to graduate school. And I contacted a professor, his name was Stanley Keim, Keim, who was at A&M. And I told him what I thought I wanted to do in terms of finance. I had him as a finance professor at A&M. He was really good. And so I got his letter somewhere. He sent me back a list of schools to try to get into. And so I had made up my mind, well, if I could do that, then in my head anyway, the outline would be, okay, I'm about to finish my military career. Although I was honored by the wing commander wanting me to stay in. He said that he thought I would have had a great career, but he understood it. So I was kind of torn about that, but I went on to graduate school, and then after that, I went to work. Well, I went to Wharton, graduate school, finance.
How old were you?
See, I was third. Let's see, 57. I would have been 34. And I got up there, and it was so demanding. Particularly, the only thing that I think saved me is that the Air Force training is well, it's not academics like academics, but it's still
It's grueling,
academics.
yeah.
It's still keeping your mind. But the competition is enormous up there. And so, so it was challenging and, excuse me, but somehow I made it. And then I decided to move back to Dallas. I did have some job offers in New York. The mother was by herself now, because my sisters had all moved out with their respective husbands. And I thought to myself, you know, she's been a good trooper, and this is what's fair. If it's fair. So I came back to Dallas, went to work for in a small investment banking firm here. Then I actually went to work for sales for several years and did their finance work. And then one thing led to the other, you know, well, would you do mine, or, you know, et cetera. Kind of snowballed like that. And
Here you are.
the luck.
Okay, family. Where'd you meet your wife? How long have you been married?
Okay, been married since.
How did you meet her?
I met her at the University Park swimming pool,
Mhm.
and she was dating my cousin,
Who is
which was, well, she's my second cousin, Martin Rachowski.
Martin Rachowski, okay.
And she, what do you call that? What's the word? When you jilled? What is the word? When you jettison somebody
Well,
for
it's,
the other person.
oh, stole.
Stolen. Yeah, well, there's another word. But anyway, so somehow she, you know, for whatever reasons,
Mhm.
she says that my uniform at the time, I had been on leave from the United States Air Force. I think she liked those silver wings.
At the swimming pool?
Well, she must
Yeah.
have seen them somewhere.
How long have you been married?
How long have we been married, or how long does it seem like we've been married?
How long have you been married?
Well, let's see, July the 12th, 1959.
Hmm.
So that's about 27 years. I told the guy the other day, I said, do you realize somebody that has murdered 8 people is just now getting out of the same deal? He served the same time I served.
2 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, 2 minutes. Well, I think I know the answer to this question, but who have been your greatest role models?
Golly, that's a great question. Well, maybe you'd have to ask me, are we talking about people I knew and worked with? Or are we talking about political characters?
Well, either one, but I've been thinking about friendships, relatives.
Okay. Well, friendships would definitely be Donald Zell,
Mhm.
for every kind of reasons that
Mhm.
we don't have the time for. Definitely a role model. His father, who I was fortunate enough to work around and work for, was a role model. Told Donnie this, so I'm not behind telling. I worked, in a sense, for, when you think about it, I worked for him, Ben Lipshy, Sam Bloom, Jake Feldman. Those were really important. Not talking about their wealth now, but I'm talking about insight into people, wealth of knowledge of people. And by the grace of the Lord, I was fortunate enough to be around them, immersed with them, talk to them, even every once in a while they'd ask me, what did I think about something? And, but the respect and loyalty that they had for other human beings, I think, made a profound effect. And then I gotta tell you, quickly, because I know your machine, and then I would simply tell you, working with and staying in touch with Texas A&M, and the whole system down there, the Corps of Cadets, the business school, what they've done. I take great pride in those kids. I take great pride in they go off, not arguing whether the war should be or shouldn't. That's not even an issue in my head. The issue is that they say yes and they go do their duty to the best that they can do, and that's it. And I take my hat off to them.
Well, Gerald, I
Thank
wish
you.
we had another hour and a half, because you're a kick and you're very interesting.